So we're jumping right into this interview with Elohim. I know her by many names, but we will go with El today.
Oh, I love that one.
You like that one?
Yeah.
Good. Can you tell me and any listeners about your involvement, because you have much more experience in not only the subject, but with this group, this foundation. Can you tell us about the JED Foundation as best you can?
Yeah, so I actually started working with the JED Foundation when I put out my Brain Dead EP. I gave all of the proceeds from streams, and it was put out during the Mental Health Awareness Month, and I gave all the revenue and income from streaming to the JED Foundation. It was kind of serendipitous how it all happened. I was on tour in 2019 and I was in New York, and I happened to have a meeting with them on the phone. This was before, obviously, the pandemic, and I had a meeting with them on the phone, and I was like, oh, I'm just like in New York on tour. And they were like, we actually are having like our annual gala tonight if you want to come. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to. I left all of my clothes on the bus and went into the city. And so I spent the day getting clothes, and then went to the gala that night. And I was so moved by it. And I love their foundation because it's very much, a lot of it is based in youth, which I think is very important, and educating the youth. And they, as much as going to, colleges, they explained a lot of this to me. They go into colleges and to dorms, the RAs, they do kind of classes with them, and even down to the janitor, which is amazing. They, kind of coach how to notice when, somebody's going through a hard time and, maybe having an episode of panic or depression.
How does one notice something
How does
like
one
that?
notice?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it can look different in so many ways. Some people are good at putting on fronts and, going out into the real world and then going home and being completely depressed. I'm not as good at hiding it. When I feel it so strong. And I think just asking, being present, not shutting somebody out because they seem down and, you don't want that energy around you, asking questions and asking somebody simply if they're okay or if they need someone to talk to. But yeah, it can look a lot of different ways, actually.
Well, it sounds like we've come a long way, because I don't remember any options like this.
Same. I don't remember anything.
And for me, it was always music that I turned to, because these options didn't exist, as I said. But before we started talking, and I had this thought earlier in the car, which was that I don't have any answers or solutions to depression, anxiety, fear, panic attacks. But what I did find through music is that at least I felt a little more comfortable in that discomfort at the time, whether it was a Radiohead album or Nirvana or whatever, certain songs, or Jeff Buckley, Grace, which was a big one for me at the time. And I had some breakup records going through, heartbreak and that kind of thing. And it's not, I don't know if there's a solution rather than a way of being a little more comfortable, sort of putting on your as a friend calls them, soft pants, aka sweatpants. So it's like, or a blanket to deal with a difficult time, because I'll have these little episodes where I'll think, and I don't mean to claim that mine are as severe as or as yours from what you've described. So I don't mean to say anything as far as that goes, other than my personal experience is that music has always made me feel at least like I was in the right place while going through that episode. And it remains that way even at this, as I get older.
Yeah, I mean, even just yesterday, I was in Miami all weekend and had shows, and
so fancy.
So fancy. For me, traveling is, I just, after doing it a lot in shows and traveling and stuff, that's very anxiety inducing for me. And during the pandemic, I was just at home, so I didn't have anxiety. And then now trying to get back out there and do it, it's definitely hitting me really, really hard. So this weekend was really tough for me. And then I got home, and yesterday I had a session, and this is with people who I see all the time. They're my family, and I just could not shake this anxious, panicky, like buzzy feeling and dissociating. Every hour kind of this wave would hit me, and it was just like, where am I? But I noticed the second, and it was like being around people and trying to make conversation, and then the second that I walked into the vocal booth and started tracking vocals, I felt this like calmness. And it's similar when I get on stage. And I think it's because I can kind of like rely on the music and go there and just be present in the music. So, I mean, music has, definitely been a savior for me and a calming and coping mechanism also. And so I feel incredibly blessed to have that. But, it also brings comfort to know that the songs that we create, your song Sail was one of the first songs I ever heard that spoke about anything related to mental health, and I'm sure that saved so many people, because hearing that on the radio, it's like, wait, I've never heard somebody talk about ADD, other than my therapist or something. And I feel like even when that song came out, I think even 5 years ago, there was not as much of a conversation about mental health and therapy and, the right medication. And I was terrified to start medication. And, I think just having the conversation, and it's why, organizations like JED are amazing, because they're, bringing that conversation to the youth.
How do you find what's the fine line between a legitimate, that's probably the wrong word. This is such a sensitive subject, so I want to, okay. I want to walk the rope.
It's a safe place with me though. And
for anyone listening too,
I know, but I'll help guide you also. And you can say your thoughts and your questions and your feelings are all valid. And, it doesn't, we all have these questions, and I guess I'm somebody that's okay to talk about it. So now is kind of the time that you can ask those questions. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I suppose, do you ever get frustrated, and what's that line between, sometimes I feel like talking about it adds to the problem in a certain way, where you may be having a good day, or maybe everything's going good, and then hearing too much chatter about it could possibly send you into a reverse spiral, because you're thinking, oh wait, yeah, that's right, I do feel bad sometimes, or I get these anxiety attacks, and then it kind of triggers you to have these negative thoughts. So what's the balance there?
I've talked to so many hundreds of people throughout, these last few years of putting out music and speaking openly about this. And I've talked to people, even other artists that are like, I can't talk about it because I just think it's going to trigger me. And that's okay too. I find that when I find common ground with others, it's interesting. Like I get comments that are like, I never knew anyone, went through this the way that I do. And they spell out exactly what their panic attacks looks like, and they're almost to a T like mine. And to me, I'm like, this brings me comfort. I wish that they did not feel this, but there's a lot of people in my life, and it can even be family, that they just don't understand it. And so it makes you feel even more alienated. And
so my journey has been, 'cause all I know is what I've experienced,
of course,
all I could speak on, at least. And it has been a negative thought comes into my head, and then I, because of fear, grab onto that negative thought, and then it turns into a bigger thought, and I have to zap myself out of it sometimes. Wait, this isn't even real. And it occurred to me that the reason it felt like it was my fault that I was having these negative thoughts, but then it occurred to me I've consumed so much bullshit, either in media, television, entertainment, Life in general. The last 2-3 years obviously have been extremely negative for many people, and there's been plenty of silver lining throughout that as well, I'm sure. But it's not my fault necessarily that I have weird dark thoughts, because I consume so much of that in entertainment and especially news. I mean, if you want to get bummed out, it doesn't matter which news cycle it is, or which whatever
it's
team
horrifying.
you're on. If you just do, so I was anti-news for 7 years.
I'm still very
But really,
anti-news.
I didn't even know what was going on half the time. And I guess what I'm asking is, can you relate to what I'm saying as far as a negative thought entering your head, like some gruesome, dark horror movie scenario or whatever, because you've seen some bad movie recently or whatever?
I always have this thought, like, I wonder if growing up, if I never saw any scary movies or even like the X-Files or stuff like that, I wonder where my brain would be at, because I do find that, if I'm scared and I'm home alone, it's like, what is in my head? I'm like, what am I actually thinking about in my head? And it's like, oh, this, show or movie that I saw, or this thing on the news that I saw. So yeah, it's interesting. So a lot of times I'm like, I just want to run away and, live on a farm and not have any access to any type of media, social media.
It's easy to just turn it out. And recently I was hanging out with a really talented musician friend who revealed to me a major, major pop star that I won't share who that is out of respect, doesn't have a phone. This individual doesn't have a phone and just checks internet maybe once a day, and that's so cool. I'm really jealous of that, and I'd like to get back to that.
I realize that I have to be off of my phone. I'll text my family thread and I'll say, these are the people that I'm with. If you need to reach me, contact them.
I do that. It's kind of cheating, because you're like, I don't want any bad news, and then
I know.
Just text my wife anyways or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's good to detach and I think that we probably are on our phone way less than I'm sure I'm on it less than you.
Yeah, you definitely are.
But I don't mean that as a you have a responsibility and a certain kind of connection to your fans that is really important, and see how you communicate with them, and that's sort of almost a deal you have with them,
Yeah, and that part of it is actually really comforting to me, and I love having those conversations. And I know for some people it's like, how do you, isn't it very triggering to have these kind of conversations with people? But it's really not for me. I think in another life, or maybe in my next chapter of life, I'll become a therapist or something. But I find it comforting, and I love human connection, especially online. There's something nice about not having to actually be, physically with somebody.
Well, it's
it can actually
easier.
Be comforting. What?
It's a little easier, I would say.
Yeah, it's easier, and it's just less anxiety inducing for, people who get social anxiety. And, it's just that, comforting space where it's like, I'm freaking out and I actually have people that understand me that I can go to.
I also wanted, if you didn't mind, talk about the song we did together.
Yeah.
I wanted to reveal the difference between the two versions.
Okay.
Okay.
You revealed that. I'll reveal how I ended up doing a cover of this song.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I will say that as far as mental health goes, great lyrics, and it fits with. But when I was younger, when that song came out, and we're talking, of course, everybody about Flagpole Sitta, which is hard for me to say.
I know. It's an odd name
Sitter.
for such a brilliant song, but I remember the chorus, and
it was like a breakthrough rando set, and Harvey Danger, right?
Yeah.
And the video was really cool. He was really interesting looking, and it's like a sarcastic anger song in some ways, and I always love that Rage Against the Machine lyric very much in that
Me
song.
too.
And But yeah,
all of the lyrics are when I sat down at the piano, because I was just driving. They were doing like a flashback. I was driving on Topanga Canyon, and they were doing a flashback hour on K-Rock, and they played that song, and I was like, God, this is such a good song. And then I went home that night and figured out the chords and looked up the lyrics, and I was just like, whoa, this is actually talking about mental health, and I had no idea, and it just like resonated so much with me. It's pretty crazy how you can kind of go back and review lyrics even of songs that you knew when you were a kid, and you're just like, wow, this was very deep lyrics that just became a hit song that, you know, everyone's humming but they didn't really know. I feel that way about your song.
And so thank you. And so you recorded that pretty loose, right?
I just recorded piano and vocal, and I remember I was sitting right here and I was on my computer, and you and I were just like chatting on like text messaging, and I was like, I just made this like a cappella piano thing. Can I send it to you? I think you'll know the song. And I sent it, and you were like, can I produce this? And I was like, please, yes. So I sent you the acapella, and then you did an insane job producing it.
Thank you. And then after that, I remember you and your team added a bunch more to the song, which was totally cool, and added a certain kind of life and energy with the choir. And so that version does exist already for maybe any of my fans who haven't heard that, although I hope they have.
It was actually on the Brain Dead EP that I put out that all of the proceeds went to Jed. So it's kind of weirdly full circle in a very cool way.
So when I was completing, but so truth be told, even though I thought that the version that was on your record was awesome, and I still think that, there was something about the original version that I loved in a different way because there was less around your vocal.
Yeah.
So on my covers album that you're on as well, it's a different version of that song, which has less of the extra awesome stuff, and it's more about your vocal. And I don't even sing that much on that song, which is also a huge bonus to me, is that I only drop in on the bridge.
You have such a cool voice.
Thanks.
It's so crazy.
This hurts so bad, this thing in my ear. It's been so long since I wore these. They're like, you have to get refit. But anyway, staying on the song, so just for anyone who's curious, the version on my record is a more minimal version of the song that was on your record. And I'm curious, what people will think.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll appreciate the difference, but I just wanted to showcase your voice and me dropping in as just a brother from a different time, in the bridge, and that's
appreciate you.
I'm glad it worked out.
I first met you when you had asked me to do a table for one. And I remember just like, obviously I knew your voice, but really listening to your voice on that was just like, I was like, oh, you are who you are for a reason. You have such a special quality and tone and just like energy in the way that you sing and produce. And I feel like it came across on this one. So thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Before we started this, I asked her to say all those nice things.
He's paying me. No, genuinely, I was like very impressed. And the other thing that was probably the most impressive thing about you was that this was like probably 3 or 4 years ago when I went to your house. And I was not nervous, but kind of just like had been around, a lot of people in the industry who are just had success and a lot of success like you. And, we're just kind of assholes and just too cool. And I was really, really, it was so cool to go to your house and you just like open arms. And I remember you gave me kombucha, and it's now like our favorite one. It was the root beer one.
Root beer. It's all about the kombucha.
But you also you were so open to letting me ask questions, and I'm one of those people that loves to ask questions, and you were just like, ask whatever you want, and I thought that was really,
well,
really
who
cool
would say
and
stop
welcoming.
asking, I guess, is the question.
Please stop talking. Oh no, I think people who don't want you to ask questions, they just like give you short answers and stuff. But you were very, and you were like, honestly, ask me anything. And you were really open and humble, which was very, very cool and really different.
Well, thank you for saying those kind things. Which kind of reminds me of one sort of helpful tool that I've come across along the ways, along my journey, and it came from my drummer, really. But anytime I was like super nervous to do a high pressure gig, such as like a late night kind of show or something like that, or maybe a more elevated show for whatever reason, he pulls me aside and goes, "Dude, you're not that important.
I love that.
Don't take yourself so seriously." And that goes for pretty much anyone. And that, I think that's really helpful is A, we're not alone. If your body's physically failing you because you're having a deal, you're not alone. So that's the good news. And same with being nervous to have to do something, whether it's like you're in little league baseball or have to present some sort of. Do people still give reports in school? Do that happen? Or like
Yeah, that was a thing. I don't
or
know if
school, or
it's still-
just happen to be around certain people that. So
Yeah.
the good news is you're not alone, and you're not the first person to have to go through that. And I think that's the best thing I could remind myself anytime I lose my mind.
And what you said about you're not that important. It's also just kind of like letting go and reminding yourself that nothing is that important, and your just sanity is probably the most important, and really just doing whatever you can to just kind of remind yourself that you're not alone, and we're all on this ride together, and we're all just trying to figure out this thing called life.
And I think the more times you go through it, I suppose the better off you'll be in the long run. So it'll be interesting to see 5 years from now, if you're coping with these situations better, or have picked up new tools along the way to help, So we just solved it. It's going to be okay. Right here, right?